The heat shimmer rose off Main Street like ghosts dancing on their own graves. Ethan Cross sat motionless on his black gelding at the edge of town, his shadow stretching long across the dirt road. His hat brim cast his face in darkness, but his eyes, pale gray, cold as winter iron, fixed on the saloon 100 yards ahead. Beside him, Deputy Marshal Tom Garrett shifted in his saddle, leather creaking. "Ethan, we should wait for backup. Sheriff's men are 20 minutes out." Cross didn't look at him. 20 minutes is 20 too many. Ryder's got at least 4 guns in there, maybe 6. I counted 5 from the roof line. Tom's jaw tightened. "Then you know this is suicide." "No." Cross's voice was flat, final. "It's overdue." He nudged his horse forward. Tom swore under his breath and followed. The town watched them come. Faces disappeared from windows. A shopkeeper pulled his daughter inside and bolted the door. Even the dogs had the sense to slink into alleys. Ashford knew death when it rode down Main Street in a black hat and a U.S. Marshal's badge. Cross dismounted 20 feet from the saloon. His boots hit the ground without sound. Tom took position to his left, rifle ready, hand steady despite the sweat beading on his upper lip. "Ryder!" Cross's shout cut through the afternoon like a blade. "Time's up!" Silence. Then the saloon doors creaked open. The woman stumbled out first, middle-aged, her face streaked with tears and dust, her dress torn at the shoulder. Behind her, Ryder Kane stood framed in the doorway like a portrait of damnation. Tall, lean, his dark hair slicked back, a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. He held a Colt Peacemaker loose in his right hand, smoke curling from the barrel. He'd already fired a shot. Inside. Cross's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes, a flash of calculation, a fury held on a razor's edge. "Ethan Cross." Ryder's grin was slow, mean. "Been a long time." "Not long enough. 5 years rotting in that hole you put me in. You know what that does to a man?" "Should have hanged you when I had the chance." Ryder's grin widened. "Probably. But you didn't. You played by the rules. Always did. That's why I knew you'd come alone." "I'm not alone." Ryder's eyes flicked to Tom, dismissive. "Him? He's just a boy playing dress-up." His gaze returned to Cross. "You, though, you're the real thing. That's why this had to be you and me." "Where's the husband?" "Inside. Breathing. For now." Ryder tilted his head. "You want him back? Walk in. Unarmed." Tom stepped forward. "Don't." Cross raised a hand, cutting him off. His eyes never left Ryder. "I walk in, you let them both go." "Sure." "Your word's worth dirt, Ryder." "Then I guess you've got a choice to make, Marshal." The seconds stretched. Somewhere down the street a shutter banged in the wind. Cross's hand moved to his gun belt, slow and deliberate. He unbuckled it, let it drop to the dust. Then the Winchester slung across his back. Then the knife in his boot. Tom's voice was low, urgent. "Ethan, he'll kill you the second you step through that door." "Probably." "Then why?" "Because those people didn't ask to be here." Cross's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of certainty. "I did." He walked forward. Ryder stepped aside, still grinning, and Cross entered the Red Rock Saloon. The interior smelled like stale beer, tobacco, and fear. The husband, a thin man in a store clerk's apron, sat on the floor against the bar, hands tied, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. 3 of Ryder's men stood positioned around the room, one by the back door, one near the stairs, one behind the bar with a shotgun. Cross noted them all in a heartbeat. Ryder sauntered in behind him, letting the doors swing shut. "You know, I used to dream about this. A lot of lonely nights in that cell, nothing to do but think about all the ways I'd make you suffer." "Get on with it, then." Ryder laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "See? That's what I always respected about you, Cross. No begging, no bargaining, just straight to the bone." He gestured lazily toward the clerk. "Cut him loose, Merrick." The man by the stairs moved forward, pulled a knife, and sliced through the ropes. The clerk scrambled to his feet and bolted for the door without a word. "There." Ryder spread his arms. "Good deed done. Now." The shotgun blast tore through the silence like the end of the world. Cross saw it in fragments. Tom bursting through the door, rifle raised. The man behind the bar swinging the shotgun toward him. The flash. The spray of crimson. Tom's body jerking backward, hitting the dirt outside. Everything slowed. Cross moved on instinct. He grabbed the nearest chair and hurled it at the shooter behind the bar. The man ducked. Cross dove for Tom's fallen rifle just outside the doorway, rolled, came up firing. The first shot took the shotgun man through the chest. The second clipped Merrick in the shoulder, spinning him into the wall. The third, Ryder was already moving, diving behind the bar, returning fire. The bullet seared past Cross's ear, so close he felt the heat. Cross scrambled behind an overturned table. Splinters exploded above his head as Ryder's men opened up. The saloon erupted into chaos, gunfire, smoke, shouts. The man by the back door charged. Cross shot him twice in the gut. He went down screaming. Merrick, clutching his bleeding shoulder, tried to raise his pistol. Cross put a round through his gun hand. The weapon clattered away. Merrick collapsed, cursing. Then silence, just the ringing in Cross's ears and the ragged sound of his own breathing. He waited. From behind the bar, Ryder's voice drifted out, calm as Sunday morning. "Hell of a thing, Ethan. You just killed 3 of my boys. Should have been 4. Still could be." A pause. "But I'm thinking we both know how this ends. You come for me, I put you down. I come for you, maybe you get lucky. Either way, we're both bleeding out in this shithole by sundown." Cross didn't answer. His eyes were on Tom's body sprawled in the doorway, blood pooling in the dust. The deputy's eyes stared at nothing. 26 years old, married 8 months. Wife expecting their first child in October, gone. Something inside Cross, something he'd kept locked down tight for years, cracked open. "Tell you what," Ryder's voice again, almost conversational. "I'm going to walk out that back door. You can chase me if you want, but we both know you won't catch me. Not today. And next time we meet, I'll make sure there's no deputies around to screw things up." Cross heard the back door creak open. He surged to his feet, vaulted the bar. Empty. Ryder was already gone, vanished into the maze of back alleys and desert beyond. Cross stood there, rifle in hand, surrounded by the dead and dying, the smell of gunpowder thick in his throat. Outside, voices rose, townspeople emerging now that the shooting had stopped. Someone shouted for the doctor. Someone else started praying over Tom's body. Cross walked out into the sunlight. The sheriff and his men were riding in from the north, too late, as always. He knelt beside Tom, closed the deputy's eyes, said nothing. The sheriff, a red-faced man named Pritchard, dismounted and approached cautiously. "Marshal Cross, we came soon as we heard." Cross stood. "He's dead." "I can see that. Ryder?" "Gone." "We'll form a posse. Track him." "No." Pritchard blinked. "No?" Cross turned to face him. His expression was carved from stone, but his eyes burned. "This is mine. You and your men stay here. Bury Tom. Send word to his wife." He picked up his gun belt from the dirt, buckled it on. "I'm going after Ryder. Alone." "Marshal, that's not—" "I'm done talking." He swung into his saddle. The black gelding stamped, sensing his rider's fury. Pritchard stepped back. "Where will you go?" Cross looked south, toward the Badlands, toward the lawless territories where men like Ryder Kane thrived in the spaces between civilization and chaos. "Wherever he runs," Cross said quietly. "I'll be right behind him." He rode out of Ashford without looking back. Bob. The trail led south and east into country that didn't forgive mistakes. Cross tracked Ryder for 3 days through scrub desert and broken canyon land, following signs most men would miss. A disturbed stone here, a snapped twig there, the faint imprint of a boot heel in dust. On the 4th day, he found the first body. It was one of Ryder's men, the one Cross had gut shot in the saloon. Someone had dragged him out here and put a bullet in his head. Mercy or expedience, Cross couldn't tell. Didn't matter. Ryder was cutting loose anyone who slowed him down. That night, Cross made camp in a dry wash. No fire, jerky, and water for supper. He sat with his back against a rock, rifle across his knees, staring at the stars. Tom's face kept surfacing in his mind. "You don't have to do this," Tom had said once, months back, after a hard chase that ended in a shootout outside El Paso. "You've done enough. Retire. Find some peace. Peace. Cross didn't believe in peace. Not for men like him. He'd spent 15 years wearing the badge, hunting the worst the frontier had to offer. He'd seen things that would break most men. Slaughters, burnings, children left orphaned by men who killed for sport. He'd put some of them down, sent others to the gallows. But there were always more. Ryder Kane was different, though. Ryder had killed Tom not because he had to, but because he could. Because he wanted Cross to feel it. And Cross did. He felt it like a knife between his ribs every time he closed his eyes. This wasn't about the badge anymore. It wasn't about justice. This was blood calling for blood. Mat. On the 5th day, Cross rode into a settlement called Bitter Springs. Barely a town, just a trading post, a stable, and a handful of shacks clinging to existence in the shadow of the San Rafael Mountains. He tied his horse outside the trading post and went in. The man behind the counter was ancient, skin like old leather, one milky eye. He looked Cross up and down. Marshal. You see a man come through here? Tall, dark hair, scar on his face? Maybe. Cross laid a silver dollar on the counter. The old man's good eye glinted. He came through yesterday morning, bought supplies, asked about trails south. He alone? Had 2 men with him. They say where they were headed? No, but I heard them talking. Something about Red Canyon and someone named Vega. Cross's jaw tightened. Vega? The old man nodded slowly. You know him? I know of him. Cross picked up the dollar, dropped 2 more in its place. Anyone else come through asking about Ryder? Just you, Marshal. Cross turned to leave. Marshal. He paused. The old man leaned forward. Red Canyon's bad country. Vega's worse. You ride in there alone, you won't ride out. Thanks for the warning. Outside, the sun was a brass coin in a white sky. Cross checked his rifle, his pistol, the rounds in his belt. Everything was in order. He mounted up and rode south. Outside. Red Canyon was a scar in the earth, a jagged slash of red rock and deep shadows where the sun never quite reached the bottom. Outlaws used it as a waypoint, a place to disappear when the law got too close. And Mateo Vega was the man who controlled it. Vega wasn't an outlaw in the traditional sense. He was a broker, someone who moved guns, information, and men across the border. He had connections with Apaches, with Mexican federales, with anyone willing to pay, and he had no loyalty to anything except profit. If Ryder was dealing with Vega, it meant he was planning something bigger than just running. Cross reached the canyon entrance at dusk. He dismounted and led his horse forward on foot, eyes scanning the high ridges. Plenty of places for a lookout. Plenty of places to get shot. He made it 100 yards in before the voice called out, "Far enough, gringo." Cross stopped. A man stepped out from behind a boulder. Apache, young, carrying a Winchester. 2 more appeared on the ridge above, rifles trained down. "You lost?" the first man said. "I'm looking for Mateo Vega." "He expecting you?" "No." "Then turn around." Cross met his gaze, steady. "Tell him U.S. Marshal Ethan Cross wants to talk. Tell him it's about Ryder Kane." The Apache studied him for a long moment. Then he gestured with his rifle. "Walk." They led Cross deeper into the canyon, past crude shelters and campfires where hard-eyed men watched him pass. Cross counted at least 20, Apaches, Mexicans, a few white renegades, all armed. At the far end of the canyon, beneath an overhang of red rock, a man sat at a makeshift table playing solitaire. Mateo Vega was in his 50s, gray-streaked hair pulled back, a white shirt somehow immaculate despite the dust. He didn't look up as Cross approached. "Marshal Cross." Vega's voice was smooth, cultured. "I wondered when you'd find your way here." "Where's Ryder?" "Gone." "Where?" Vega turned over a card. "Even if I knew, why would I tell you?" "Because I'm asking nice." Vega smiled. "You're asking, but not nice." He finally looked up. "Ryder came to me with a proposition, guns for safe passage. I accepted. Our business is concluded." "What kind of guns?" "Kind that make noise." "Who's he selling to?" "That, Marshal, is not my concern." Vega returned to his cards. You should leave. This place isn't healthy for lawmen. Cross leaned forward, hands on the table. Tom Garrett was 26 years old. Ryder shot him in the back. I'm going to find him. And when I do, I'm going to put him in the ground. If you're in my way, you'll go down with him. Vega's smile faded. He set down his cards slowly. You threaten me? Here? In my canyon, surrounded by my men? I'm stating a fact. For a moment, the only sound was the wind hissing through the rocks. Then Vega laughed, a dry, humorless sound. You have steel, I'll give you that. Stupid steel, but steel nonetheless. He stood. Ryder is heading to the Cascara settlement, 3 days' ride southeast. He's meeting with a war chief named Tahvo. If you want him, that's where he'll be. Cross straightened. Why tell me? Because Ryder Kane is a mad dog, and mad dogs bite the hand that feeds them. Better you put him down than he comes back here looking for more. Vega gestured to his men. See the Marshal out, and make sure he leaves with everything he came with. Cross turned to go. Marshal. He paused. Vega's eyes were cold. If you survive Tavo, don't come back this way. Cross didn't answer. He walked out of Red Canyon with the Apaches at his back, mounted his horse, and rode into the gathering dark. He made camp 10 miles out, in a shallow arroyo that offered some cover from the wind. No fire again, just cold jerky and colder thoughts. Tahvo. Cross had heard the name before, a renegade Apache war chief who'd broken from the main tribes, taking a group of young warriors with him. They raided ranches, hit supply wagons, killed anyone who crossed their path. The army had been trying to run them down for 2 years with no success. If Ryder was selling guns to Tavo, it meant he was financing a war, and that meant a lot more people were going to die. Cross checked his guns for the 3rd time that night. 6 rounds in the Colt, 15 in the rifle, 2 boxes of ammunition in his saddlebag. Not enough if things went bad. But then, it was never enough. He was rolling out his bedroll when he heard the sound, faint, distant. A horse, moving fast. Cross grabbed his rifle and melted into the shadows. The rider came over the rise at a gallop, silhouetted against the moon. Then the horse stumbled, went down hard. The rider tumbled free, rolled, didn't get up. Cross waited. No movement. He approached cautiously, rifle raised. The horse was done. Lame, maybe worse. The rider lay face down in the dirt. Cross nudged them with his boot. No response. He knelt, rolled the body over. Not a him. A her. Late 20s, maybe 30. Dark hair, sun-browned skin, dressed in worn trousers and a man's shirt. Blood on her side, soaking through the fabric. She wasn't dead. Not yet. Her breathing was shallow, ragged. Cross swore under his breath. He couldn't leave her out here. Coyotes would find her by morning. He lifted her carefully, carried her back to his camp, laid her on his bedroll. The wound was a bullet graze. Nasty, but not fatal if it didn't get infected. He cleaned it with whiskey from his canteen, packed it with a strip of cloth torn from his spare shirt, and bound it tight. She didn't wake. Cross sat back, studying her face. There was something hard in the set of her jaw, even unconscious. This wasn't some settler's daughter. This was someone who'd seen trouble and walked toward it more than once. He kept watch through the night, rifle across his knees, listening to the sound of her breathing mix with the wind. When dawn broke, her eyes finally opened. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, "Who the hell are you?" "Name's Cross, Ethan Cross." Her eyes flicked to his badge. "Marshal." "That's right." She tried to sit up, winced, fell back. "Where am I?" 10 miles south of Red Canyon. You came in fast, horse gave out. She closed her eyes. "Damn. You want to tell me who shot you?" "No." "You want to tell me who you are?" "No." Cross almost smiled. "Fair enough." He handed her his canteen. "Drink. Then you're moving on." She drank, handed it back. "How bad?" "You'll live. Won't be fun for a few days." She nodded slowly, then her eyes sharpened. "You heading south?" "Maybe." "Toward Cascara territory?" Cross's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. "What do you know about that?" She studied him. I know a man named Ryder Kane is heading that way, and I know you're hunting him. How? I was in Red Canyon when you showed up, heard the whole thing. She pushed herself up on one elbow, gritting her teeth against the pain. Name's Lena Vale, and if you're going after Ryder, I'm coming with you. No, you're not. He's the one who shot me. That stopped Cross. When? 2 days ago. I was guiding a wagon train through the pass. Ryder and his boys hit us, killed the men, took the guns we were hauling. I got away. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Barely. You know him? I know of him. He runs with bad people. I run adjacent to bad people. Our paths crossed. She met his eyes. I owe him a bullet. Get in line. I'm serious. So am I. Cross stood. You're in no shape to ride. Rest here. I'll leave you supplies. When you're strong enough, head north. I'm not going north. You're not coming with me. Lena swung her legs over the side of the bedroll, teeth clenched, and forced herself to her feet. She swayed, caught herself against a rock. I can ride. You can barely stand. Then I'll fall off a few times. Won't be the first. She fixed him with a hard stare. You can leave me here, but I'll just follow your tracks. You know I will. Cross recognized the look in her eyes. He'd seen it in his own reflection too many times. He sighed. You slow me down. I leave you behind. Fair. You get yourself killed, that's on you. Wouldn't have it any other way. Cross walked to the dead horse, pulled the saddle and gear free. Lena's rifle, a battered Winchester, was still strapped to the side. He checked it, handed it to her. You know how to use this? She took it, worked the lever one-handed. Better than you. Cross almost smiled again. We'll see. He rigged a travois behind his gelding, fashioned a rough seat. Lena didn't argue. She knew her limits. She settled onto the travois with her rifle across her lap, and they headed southeast into country where the law ended and survival was the only rule that mattered. Behind them, the sun climbed higher, burning the sky white. Ahead, somewhere in the heat and dust and blood-soaked earth, Ryder Kane was waiting, and Ethan Cross was coming. They traveled through country that seemed designed to kill anything foolish enough to cross it. The land stretched flat and merciless under a sun that turned the air to liquid heat, broken only by jagged outcroppings of rock that offered no shade and less comfort. Cross kept them moving at a steady pace, stopping only when the gelding needed rest or when Lena's face went too pale and her breathing got too shallow. She never complained, not once. By the second day, she was riding behind him on the horse instead of on the travois. Her wound was healing, slowly, painfully, but she could sit a saddle without falling off, and that was enough. They didn't talk much. Cross wasn't the talking type, and Lena seemed content with silence. But on the third morning, as they watered the horse at a dried-up creek bed that still held a few stagnant pools, she finally broke it. You married, Marshal. Cross glanced at her. No. Ever been? No. Smart man. She took a drink from her canteen, wiped her mouth. Marriage is a cage. Pretty at first, maybe, but still a cage. You sound like you know. I was married once. Her voice was flat, matter-of-fact. Long time ago. To a man who thought his fists were a good way to settle an argument. Cross said nothing. I stayed longer than I should have. Thought I could fix him, or fix myself or something. She shook her head. One night, he came home drunk and mean. Started in on me like usual, only that time I had a skillet in my hand. She met Cross's eyes. He woke up 3 days later. I was already 2 states away. He come after you? Tried. Found him in a ditch outside Tucson with a bullet in his back. Someone else got to him first. She shrugged. Saved me the trouble. Cross studied her. That when you started running with rough company? That's when I started running, period. Rough company was just what I found along the way. She stood, testing her side, wincing slightly. What about you? What made you pick up a badge? Seemed like the right thing to do at the time. That's not an answer. Cross checked the gelding's hooves, his back to her. My father was a drunk, beat my mother until she stopped fighting back. Then he started on me and my sister. His voice was quiet, measured. When I was 14, he came home one night worse than usual. I put him down with a piece of firewood, broke his skull, thought I'd killed him. Did you? No, but I wish I had. Cross straightened, turned to face her. He lived another 10 years, died in a gutter in St. Louis, choking on his own vomit. By then I was already wearing a badge, trying to convince myself I was different from him. Are you? I don't know. He mounted the horse, offered her a hand up. But I've spent 15 years trying to find out. Lena took his hand and swung up behind him. Well, if it helps, you haven't beaten me yet. So you're doing better than some. Cross almost smiled. Day's not over. They rode on. By late afternoon, the land began to change. The flat desert gave way to rolling hills studded with juniper and pinon. In the distance, the dark line of mountains rose against the sky. Somewhere in those mountains was the Cascara settlement and Ryder Kane. Cross pulled up on a rise and scanned the horizon. Smoke. Faint. Far off. But there. Lena saw it too. Campfire? Maybe. Or something worse. They approached cautiously, Cross with his rifle across the saddle, Lena with her hand on her pistol despite the pain it caused her side. As they crested the next hill, the source of the smoke became clear. A wagon, or what was left of one, burned down to the frame, still smoldering. Two bodies lay in the dirt nearby, men, both shot multiple times. Whoever had done this was long gone, but the blood was fresh. Cross dismounted, checked the bodies. Dead maybe 4 or 5 hours. Lena slid down carefully, scanning the area. Apaches? No. Cross pointed to the wagon. They would have taken everything. This was left behind, deliberate. Ryder? Could be. Or someone else running the same game. He walked a slow circle around the wreckage, reading the tracks. 5 horses. Heading southeast. Same direction we're going. They know we're following? If they do, they don't care. Cross swung back into the saddle. We keep moving, but we keep our eyes open. They rode until dark, then made camp in a shallow ravine that offered some cover from prying eyes. Cross built a small fire, just enough to boil coffee and warm some beans. Lena sat across from him, cleaning her rifle with a rag she'd torn from her shirt. You really think you can take Ryder? She asked after a while. Cross poured coffee into 2 tin cups, handed her one. I don't think. I know. He's got men. We've got us. I've had worse odds. Name one time. Cross sipped his coffee, stared into the fire. Durango, 3 years back. Chasing a gang of claim jumpers who'd killed a family outside town. Tracked them to a box canyon. 7 of them, one of me. Didn't have a choice. They were getting ready to cross into Mexico. What happened? I walked in with a white flag. Told them I'd let them go if they surrendered the ringleader. And? They laughed, started shooting. Cross's jaw tightened. By the time the smoke cleared, 4 were dead, 2 ran. The ringleader tried to use a hostage, one of their own, wounded. He looked up, met her eyes. I shot through the hostage, killed them both. Lena didn't blink. The hostage was already dead? No, he was screaming, but he was gut shot, bleeding out. Wasn't going to make it. Cross set down his cup. I made a choice. Fast death or slow. He got fast. And you've been carrying that ever since. I carry all of them. Lena was quiet for a long moment. Then, Ryder's not going to surrender. I know. And you're not planning to arrest him. Cross met her gaze. No. Good. She set her rifle aside, leaned back against the ravine wall. Because after what he did to that wagon train, after Tom, after all of it, he's earned what's coming. They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote howled. The sound hung in the air like a warning. Cross took first watch. Lena fell asleep almost immediately, exhaustion finally catching up with her. He sat with his rifle across his knees, eyes on the darkness beyond the firelight, mind turning over the days ahead. Tavo, Ryder, guns, blood. Tom's face surfaced again, younger than Cross remembered, smiling at some joke he'd made on the trail. Cross pushed the thought away. There'd be time for ghosts later. Right now he needed to focus on the living. The night passed without incident. At dawn, they saddled up and pushed deeper into the mountains. The terrain grew rougher, narrow trails that hugged cliff faces, switchbacks that tested the gelding's endurance. Twice they had to dismount and lead the horse through passages too tight to ride. Lena kept up, though Cross could see the pain in the way she moved, the tightness around her eyes. Around midday, they found another sign of Ryder's passage. A dead horse, shot in the head, left to rot. The saddle was gone, but the brand on its flank was clear. Lena crouched beside it. U.S. Cavalry. Cross nodded. Ryder must have hit a patrol, took what he needed. How many you think he's got with him now? Hard to say, but he's gathering an army. Cross straightened, scanned the trail ahead. We're getting close. They were. Cross could feel it, that tightness in his gut that always came before violence. The air itself seemed heavier, charged with something electric and mean. By late afternoon, they reached a ridgeline that looked out over a broad valley. And there, nestled in the valley floor beside a narrow river, was the Cascara settlement. It wasn't much, maybe 30 shelters made of brush and hide. A handful of horses penned in a crude corral, cook fires sending thin streams of smoke into the still air. But what caught Cross's attention was the group of men gathered near the largest shelter. Even from this distance, he recognized Ryder's silhouette. Lena pulled out a small spyglass she'd salvaged from her saddlebag and trained it on the settlement. I count 12, maybe 15 men, half Apache, half white. Ryder's talking to someone, big man, eagle feathers in his hair. That's Tavo. You sure? I'm sure. Cross took the spyglass, looked for himself. Tavo was exactly as he'd heard. Tall, broad-shouldered, a scar running across his chest from some old battle. He stood with his arms crossed, listening to Ryder with an expression that gave nothing away. Ryder was gesturing, animated, clearly trying to sell something. Behind him, 2 of his men unloaded crates from a wagon. Guns, Cross assumed. A lot of them. We can't take them all, Lena said quietly. No. So what's the plan? Cross lowered the spyglass, thinking. A direct assault was suicide. Even if they waited for dark, the odds were impossible. But maybe. We don't go in, he said finally. We wait. Ryder will leave eventually. When he does, we take him on the trail. And if Tavo's men go with him? Then we adjust. Lena didn't look convinced, but she nodded. All right, we wait. They pulled back from the ridge and made camp a mile away, hidden in a cluster of boulders that offered a view of the valley below. Cross kept watch through the afternoon and into the evening, tracking the movements in the settlement. As the sun set, torches were lit. The Apaches gathered around a central fire. Ryder and his men joined them. There was food, laughter, the passing of a bottle. It looked almost peaceful. Cross knew better. They're celebrating, Lena said, appearing beside him with her rifle. That's not good. No, it means the deal's done. Which means Ryder's going to move soon. Cross nodded. We need to be ready. They settled in for a long night. The settlement below came alive with firelight and sound, drums, chanting, the occasional shout. Cross recognized it for what it was. A war dance. Tavo was preparing his men for something, and Ryder had just given them the tools to do it. Around midnight, the celebration finally died down. The fires burned low. Men stumbled off to their shelters. The valley grew quiet. Cross was about to wake Lena for her watch when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. Footsteps. Faint, careful, coming from behind them. He rolled silently to his feet, rifle in hand, and melted into the shadows. Lena woke instantly, her hand going to her pistol. The footsteps stopped. Then a voice, low and rough. Easy, Marshal, I'm not here to fight. A man stepped into the faint moonlight, tall, rangy, maybe 40, with a battered hat and a long coat that had seen better days. He kept his hands visible, away from the gun on his hip. Cross didn't lower his rifle. Who are you? Name's Silas Crow. The man's grin was crooked, humorless. I'm a bounty hunter, and I'm here for the same reason you are. Ryder Kane. That's right. Man's got a price on his head. $500, dead or alive. Silas glanced toward the settlement. Preferably dead, in my opinion. Easier to transport. Lena moved to Cross's side, pistol trained on Silas. How'd you find us? Followed your tracks. You're not exactly subtle, dragging a travois through the desert. His eyes flicked to her, appraising. You're looking better than when you rode out of Red Canyon, though. Good for you. Cross's finger tightened on the trigger. You've been following us since then? Not the whole time. Lost you for a day or two. But I picked up your trail again near the burned wagon. Silas shrugged. Figured you were heading here, so I came to see what the plan was. The plan, Cross said quietly, doesn't include you. Maybe it should. 3 guns are better than 2. 3 ways to split $500, you mean? Silas's grin widened. I don't care about your reasons, Marshal. You want justice, vengeance, whatever. That's your business. I want the bounty. We both want Ryder dead. Seems like our interests align. Cross studied him. Bounty hunters were a different breed, mercenaries, essentially, loyal only to money. But Silas had a point. They were outnumbered, outgunned. Another rifle could mean the difference between success and getting buried in this valley. How many men you see down there? Cross asked. 15, give or take. Half of them are Tahavo's boys. They won't follow Ryder once he leaves, but Ryder's got 5, maybe 6 of his own. Silas tilted his head. You planning to hit them here? No, we wait. Take him on the trail. Smart. Less messy. Silas lowered his hand slowly. So what do you say, Marshal? Partners? Cross exchanged a look with Lena. She shook her head slightly, clearly not trusting this newcomer. But Cross had learned a long time ago that survival sometimes meant working with people you didn't like. You follow my lead, Cross said. No independent moves, no double crosses. And when this is over, you take the bounty and disappear. Deal. Silas extended his hand. Cross didn't take it. Break it, and I'll put you down myself. Silas's grin faded, but he nodded. Understood. They settled into an uneasy alliance, the 3 of them watching the valley below as the night deepened. Cross took first watch with Silas while Lena slept. The bounty hunter was chatty, too chatty, telling stories about past hunts, close calls, men he'd killed and men who'd nearly killed him. Cross tuned most of it out, but one thing Silas said caught his attention. You know why Tahavo's so eager for those guns? Silas asked, chewing on a piece of jerky. No. He's planning a raid, big one. There's a fort about 2 days' ride north of here, Fort Whitman. Small garrison, maybe 30 soldiers. Tahavo's been wanting to hit it for months, but he didn't have the firepower. Silas gestured toward the settlement. Now he does. Cross's jaw tightened. 30 soldiers. Families, probably. Wives, children living on the fort. If Tahavo hit them with the weapons Ryder just sold him, it would be a massacre. How do you know this? Cross asked. I've got sources. Apache sympathizers, traders who move between worlds. They talk. Silas glanced at him. Does it change your plan? Cross thought about it. His mission was Ryder. That was personal. But if he let Tahavo ride north with those guns, the blood of everyone at Fort Whitman would be on his hands too. We take Ryder first, Cross said finally. Then we deal with the guns. How? I'll figure it out, Silas chuckled. You're a real optimist, Marshal. Cross didn't answer. Dawn came slow and cold. The valley below stirred to life. Cook fires, voices, the sound of horses. Cross watched as Ryder emerged from one of the shelters, stretching, talking to one of his men. Tahavo appeared a few minutes later, and the 2 of them walked toward the corral, still deep in conversation. They're moving, Lena said, joining Cross at the ridge. He nodded. Ryder's getting ready to leave, probably heading back north to collect his payment from whoever's backing him. You think Vega? Maybe, or someone worse. Cross turned to Silas. You ready? The bounty hunter checked his pistol, his rifle. Born ready. They saddled up and moved into position, following a trail that paralleled the main route out of the valley. Cross's plan was simple. Let Ryder get a few miles from the settlement, then ambush him in a narrow pass where his numbers wouldn't matter as much. It took 2 hours before Ryder finally rode out. He had 6 men with him, all heavily armed, riding in a loose column. They looked confident, relaxed, men who'd just made a profitable deal and were heading home to enjoy it. Cross watched them pass from a vantage point above the trail. Then he, Lena, and Silas mounted up and followed at a distance, staying out of sight, letting the gap widen. The pass Cross had chosen was another hour ahead, a narrow defile between two rock walls, barely wide enough for two horses abreast, perfect for what he had in mind. They reached it first and set up. Cross positioned himself on the left side, Lena on the right, Silas in the rear to cut off any retreat. They waited, rifles ready, hearts pounding in the silence. Then faintly, the sound of hoofbeats. Cross's finger tightened on the trigger. This was it. After all the miles, all the blood, all the waiting, Ryder was finally in his sights. The first rider came into view, then the second. Ryder was third in line, his scar visible even from this distance. Cross took a breath, steadied his aim, and then everything went to hell. A gunshot cracked from somewhere behind them, not from Silas, from farther back. One of Ryder's men in the column jerked and fell from his horse. Ryder's head snapped up. Ambush! His men scattered, diving for cover, returning fire blindly. Cross swore and opened up, his first shot taking down the rider in front. Lena fired from the other side, her bullet catching another man in the shoulder. But whoever had fired that first shot had ruined the element of surprise. Ryder was already wheeling his horse around, shouting orders, directing his men. Silas appeared at Cross's side, firing rapidly. That wasn't me. I know. Cross shot another of Ryder's men as he tried to climb the rocks. Someone else is here! And then they appeared. Apaches. Half a dozen of them, swarming down from the high rocks behind Ryder's position. Tavo's men. They'd followed Ryder out of the valley, either on his orders or on their own. The pass became chaos. Bullets flew in every direction. Horses screamed and bolted. Cross saw Lena duck behind a boulder as a slug chipped the rock inches from her head. Silas went down, clutching his leg, cursing. Cross kept firing, methodical, controlled, picking targets. One Apache down, two, one of Ryder's men trying to flee, shot through the back. And then Ryder himself dismounted, rifle in hand, eyes scanning the rocks. Their gazes locked. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Then Ryder grinned and fired. The bullet tore through the air so close Cross felt the wind of it. He dove behind cover, rolled, came up firing. His shot missed. Ryder was already moving, scrambling up the slope on foot, heading for higher ground. Cross went after him. Behind him, the firefight continued. Lena's rifle barking, Silas shouting something Cross couldn't make out, the Apaches closing in. But Cross didn't care. All that mattered was the man climbing ahead of him. Ryder reached a ledge, turned, fired twice. Cross flattened himself against the rock face, felt chips explode near his head. He waited for the reload, then surged forward, closing the distance. They met on the ledge in a collision of violence. Ryder swung his rifle like a club. Cross blocked it, drove his shoulder into Ryder's gut, sent them both crashing against the rock wall. Ryder's knee came up, caught Cross in the ribs. Cross grunted, twisted, drove an elbow into Ryder's jaw. The outlaw's head snapped back, blood spraying from split lips. They broke apart, gasping, circling each other on the narrow ledge. Ryder spat blood, grinned through the pain. You should have stayed in Ashford, Marshal. Cross said nothing. He lunged. Ryder sidestepped, grabbed Cross's arm, tried to throw him off the ledge. Cross hooked his leg behind Ryder's knee, brought them both down hard. They rolled, grappling, each trying to get a hand on a weapon. Ryder's fingers found his pistol. Cross grabbed his wrist, slammed it against the rock once, twice. The gun skittered away, fell over the edge. Ryder headbutted him. Stars exploded in Cross's vision. He felt himself being shoved backward, felt the edge of the ledge under his heels. Then a gunshot, loud, close. Ryder jerked, his grip loosening. Cross shoved him away and scrambled back. Lena stood 10 feet away, smoking pistol in hand, face pale but steady. Move, Cross! He rolled to the side. Lena fired again. The bullet caught Ryder in the shoulder, spinning him around. He stumbled, fell to one knee. Cross rose, pulled his own pistol, aimed. Ryder looked up at him, blood streaming from his shoulder and mouth, and laughed, a wet, broken sound. Go ahead, Marshal. Finish it. Become what you've always been. Cross's finger tightened on the trigger. Tom's face flashed in his mind, then his father's, then his own, staring back from 100 mirrors in 100 nameless towns. He lowered the gun. No, he said quietly. You're going back, to stand trial, to hang proper. Ryder's laughter died. You're weak. Maybe. Cross holstered his pistol, pulled out rope from his belt. But I'm not you. Below, the shooting had stopped. Silence fell over the pass, broken only by the ragged breathing of the survivors and the distant cry of a hawk. Cross-bound Ryder's hands yanked him to his feet. The outlaw swayed, clutching his wounded shoulder, but he was alive. For now, that would have to be enough. Part 3. Lưu ý. Viết 6.000 đến 6.500 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện. Pha hối thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần liền mạch với phần trước, không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch. Sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề, tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ, phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ, Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc. Kể theo ngôi thứ 3, giữ đồ kịch tính không viết lan man, kết thúc phần không giới thiệu phần sau. Câu chuyện không nhắc đến Chúa, lưu ý trả lời trong một tin nhắn không nhảy sang document. But the silence didn't last. From below, a voice rang out, sharp, commanding, speaking in Apache. Cross recognized the tone, if not the words. Someone was rallying the survivors. Lena appeared at his side, breathing hard, her wound bleeding fresh through the bandage. We need to move. Now. Cross hauled Ryder forward, but the outlaw's legs buckled. He was losing blood fast, his face gray beneath the dust and sweat. He's not going to make it off this ledge, Silas called up from below. The bounty hunter was limping, his pants leg dark with blood, but he'd managed to retrieve his rifle. And we've got company coming back. Cross looked down into the pass. 3 of Ryder's men lay dead. 2 had fled on horseback, disappearing into the distance. But the Apaches, 4 were still alive, and they were regrouping near the rocks, weapons ready, eyes fixed on the ledge where Cross stood with their prize. One of them stepped forward, young, maybe 20, with war paint streaked across his face. He shouted something in Apache, then switched to broken English. You take him! You die! Tavo wants the white man, wants him alive. Tavo can go to hell, Cross shouted back. The warrior raised his rifle. You come down, now, or we kill you all. Lena fired a warning shot that kicked up dust at the warrior's feet. He jumped back and the others scattered behind cover. That bought us maybe 30 seconds, she said. Then they start shooting for real. Cross's mind raced. They were pinned on a ledge with a bleeding prisoner and limited ammunition. Below, 4 armed Apaches. Behind them, nothing but rock face. The only way down was through the Apaches, and that meant a firefight they couldn't win, unless he changed the terms. Silas, Cross called down. How bad's your leg? I'll live, but I'm not climbing. You don't have to. Get to the horses. Bring them around to the north end of the pass. There's a trail that leads up. That's a 15-minute ride. Then you better move fast. Silas swore but started hobbling toward where they'd left the horses. Cross turned to Lena. How many rounds you got left? She checked her rifle. 6. Maybe 8 in my pistol. Make them count. He shoved Ryder against the rock wall. You move, you die. Understand? Ryder coughed blood, nodded weakly. Cross positioned himself at the edge of the ledge, rifle ready. When they come, we hold them here until Silas gets back. And if he doesn't? Cross met her eyes. Then we make peace with however this ends. Lena's jaw tightened, but she nodded and took position beside him. The Apaches didn't wait long. The young warrior shouted something, and they charged, not all at once, but in pairs, using the rocks for cover, advancing in short bursts. Smart tactics, disciplined. Cross fired. His first shot dropped the warrior on the left, spinning him into the dirt. Lena took the one on the right, her bullet punching through his chest. The other 2 retreated, regrouped. 2 down, Lena said. 2 left. Plus, however many Tafo sends when he realizes what happened here. You're a real optimist, Marshal. Cross almost smiled. Told you. The next assault came from a different angle, one warrior circling wide while the other provided covering fire. Cross tracked the shooter, squeezed off a round that chipped rock inches from his head. The man ducked. Cross shifted his aim, caught the flanker mid-sprint, dropped him with a shot to the leg. The warrior went down screaming. The last Apache, the young one who'd spoken English, broke cover and ran to his fallen companion, dragging him back behind the rocks. Then silence again. Cross reloaded, eyes scanning. They're pulling back. Or waiting for reinforcements. Either way, we're running out of time. Cross glanced at Ryder. The outlaw had slumped against the wall, barely conscious. How long can you keep him breathing? Lena knelt beside Ryder, checked his pulse. Not long if we don't stop this bleeding. She tore another strip from her shirt, packed it against his shoulder wound. Why do you care? You could have let me kill him up here. Because putting a bullet in him would make me the same as him. Would it? Lena's eyes were hard. He killed your partner. He's killed dozens. He sold guns to start a war. And you're worried about being the same? Cross was quiet for a moment. Then, my father used to say that every man's got a choice, be the hammer or the anvil. He chose hammer, beat everything in his path until there was nothing left but broken pieces. He looked down at his hands, calloused and scarred from 15 years of violence. I spent my whole life trying not to be him. If I execute Ryder here, on this ledge, I cross a line I can't uncross. Some lines need crossing. Maybe. But not by me. Not today. Lena shook her head but didn't argue. She finished bandaging Ryder and moved back to her position. The minutes crawled past. No movement from below, no sound except the wind whistling through the rocks and Ryder's labored breathing. Then finally, the distant thunder of hoofbeats. Cross tensed, rifle ready, but it was Silas leading the horses up the narrow trail from the north. He reached the ledge, breathing hard, his wounded leg barely holding him upright. Took you long enough, Cross said. You're welcome. Silas handed over the reins. Now let's get the hell out of here before... An arrow hissed through the air and buried itself in the rock between them. They all turned. Below, the young Apache warrior stood in the open, bow raised, another arrow already knocked. Behind him, more figures appeared, 7, 8, 10. Tahavo's reinforcements had arrived. And at the front, unmistakable even from this distance, was Tahavo himself. The war chief was exactly as Cross had seen through the spyglass, tall, broad, his chest bare except for the scar, and a necklace of bear claws. He carried no rifle, just a tomahawk in one hand and a knife in the other. When he spoke, his voice carried like thunder. You have something that belongs to me, lawman. Cross stepped to the edge. Ryder Kane is under arrest. He's going back to stand trial. Tavo's expression didn't change. The white man brought me guns. We made a trade, but he also brought lies. He promised safety. Instead, he brought you. The war chief pointed his tomahawk at Cross. You killed my warriors. That is a debt that must be paid. Your warriors attacked us first because you came into my land, because you hunt like a coward from the rocks. Tavo's eyes narrowed. If you want the white man, you will face me, alone. No guns, blade and courage only. Silas laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. He's challenging you to single combat. That's suicide. It's also the only way we walk out of here alive, Cross said quietly. Lena grabbed his arm. You can't be serious. Look at him. He's twice your size and he's been fighting since before you were born. I know. Then you know he'll kill you. Cross gently removed her hand. Maybe. But if I don't accept, Tahavo will send all his men up here and will die anyway. At least this way, you two have a chance. I'm not leaving you to... yes, you are. Cross's voice was hard now, final. If I win, you take Ryder and ride north. Get him to Fort Whitman. There's a garrison there. They'll take custody. And if you lose? Then you ride anyway, fast and far. Don't look back. Lena's eyes were fierce, angry, but she nodded. You're an idiot, Marshal. Been called worse. Cross turned back to Tahavo. I accept, but the woman and the wounded man, they go free. No pursuit. Tahavo considered this. Then he nodded once. Agreed. They may leave, but you stay. You fight. One condition, Cross called down. If I win, the guns you got from Ryder, you don't use them against Fort Whitman. Tavo's expression darkened. You ask much for a man who is about to die. That's the deal. Take it or I put a bullet in Ryder's head right now and we all die together. The war chief was silent for a long moment. Then, if you win, the guns stay silent. You have my word. Cross knew what an Apache's word meant, more than most white men's. He nodded. Then let's finish this. He handed his rifle to Lena, then his pistol, unbuckled his gun belt, kept only his knife, a long-bladed bowie he'd carried since his first days as a marshal. Silas helped ride her onto one of the horses, tied him in place. Lena mounted the other, her face tight with emotion she wouldn't let show. Cross met her eyes one last time. If I don't make it, you'll make it. But if I don't, there's something you should know. He paused. You're stronger than you think. Stronger than anyone who ever tried to break you. Don't forget that. Lena's throat worked. Don't you dare die down there, Cross. I haven't decided yet if I like you, and I'd hate to waste the effort. He almost smiled. Then he turned and started down the trail toward the valley floor, toward Tahvo, toward whatever waited at the end of this long, blood-soaked road. Behind him, he heard Lena and Silas riding away, heading north, carrying Ryder Kane toward justice or vengeance or whatever passed for either in this broken world. Cross reached the valley floor. The Apaches parted, forming a circle. Tahvo stepped into the center, rolling his shoulders, testing the weight of his tomahawk. Cross entered the circle, knife loose in his hand. They circled each other, two predators sizing up prey. The warriors around them were silent, watching with the intensity of men who understood that what happened here mattered, not just for victory, but for honor. Tahvo spoke, his English rough but clear. You are brave, lawman. Foolish, but brave. I respect this. I don't want your respect. I want to live through the next 5 minutes. Then you will be disappointed. Tahvo shifted his grip on the tomahawk. I have killed 37 men in single combat. You will be 38. Maybe I'll be the one who breaks your streak. Tahvo smiled, a cold, predatory expression. Show me. He attacked. Fast. Impossibly fast for a man his size. The tomahawk came down in a vicious arc aimed at Cross's head. Cross dove left, felt the blade whistle past his ear. He rolled, came up slashing with his knife. Tahvo blocked with his forearm, the blade scraping off muscle like stone. They broke apart. Cross's heart hammered. Tahvo barely looked winded. The war chief circled right. Cross matched him, keeping his knife between them. Tahvo feinted left, then lunged right, the tomahawk sweeping low toward Cross's legs. Cross jumped back, but not fast enough. The blade caught his thigh, opening a shallow cut. Blood welled up hot and wet. Cross gritted his teeth, ignored it. Tahvo pressed the advantage, raining blows, overhead, sideswipe, thrust. Cross blocked, dodged, gave ground. His knife met the tomahawk twice, steel ringing against steel, the impact jarring his arm to the shoulder. He couldn't win this way. Tahvo was stronger, faster, more skilled. Every exchange pushed Cross closer to the edge of the circle, closer to exhaustion. He needed a different approach. Tahvo swung again. This time, instead of blocking, Cross dropped low and lunged forward, inside Tahvo's reach. His knife drove toward the war chief's ribs. Tahvo twisted, caught Cross's wrist with his free hand, squeezed. Bones ground together. Cross's fingers spasmed. The knife fell. Tahvo headbutted him. Cross's vision exploded white. He felt himself lifted, thrown, crashing to the ground hard enough to drive the air from his lungs. He tried to rise. Tahvo's boot caught him in the ribs, flipped him onto his back. The war chief loomed over him, tomahawk raised. You fought well, but not well enough. Cross's hand scrabbled in the dirt, closed around something, a rock, rough-edged, heavy. As Tahvo brought the tomahawk down, Cross swung the rock up with every ounce of strength he had left. It connected with Tahvo's temple. The war chief staggered, eyes going unfocused. The tomahawk fell from his grip. Cross rolled away, gasping, grabbed his fallen knife. He forced himself to his feet, every muscle screaming. Tahvo shook his head, clearing it, blood trickling from the wound on his temple. He looked at Cross with something that might have been surprise or respect. You fight dirty. I fight to win. Tahvo retrieved his tomahawk. Good. So do I. They clashed again, but something had changed. Tahvo was more cautious now, measuring Cross differently. And Cross, bleeding and battered, found a rhythm, not trying to overpower but to survive, to slip past Tahvo's guard by inches. The fight became a dance of exhaustion and will. Both men were bleeding now. both slowing. The circle of warriors murmured, surprised. No one had expected this to last so long. Tavo swung. Cross ducked under, drove his knife toward Tavo's side. The war chief blocked with his forearm again, but this time Cross didn't pull back. He twisted the blade, used Tavo's momentum against him, and brought his knee up hard into the war chief's gut. Tavo grunted, doubled over. Cross grabbed the back of his head, drove it down to meet his rising knee. Bone crunched. Blood sprayed. Tavo went down to one knee. The circle went silent. Cross stood over him, knife raised, breathing in ragged gasps. One strike would end it, one thrust to the throat or heart. Tavo looked up at him, blood streaming from his broken nose, and waited. Cross held the knife steady. Every instinct screamed at him to finish it, to eliminate the threat, to make sure he walked away alive. But he'd already made one choice today on that ledge. Now he had to make another. He lowered the knife. "It's done," he said quietly. "I won." Tavo stared at him for a long moment, then, slowly, he nodded. "You did." The war chief rose to his feet, swaying slightly. He touched his nose, winced. Then he turned to his warriors and spoke in Apache, a long string of words Cross couldn't understand. The warriors lowered their weapons. Tavo turned back to Cross. "You have honor. You could have killed me. You chose mercy. This is unusual." "So I've been told. The guns will stay silent. The fort will not be touched." Tavo picked up his tomahawk, sheathed it. "You are free to go, lawman, but do not return to this place. Next time, I will not offer single combat." Cross nodded. Understood. He sheathed his knife, retrieved his guns from where he'd left them, and walked toward his horse, legs unsteady, vision swimming, but alive. One of the warriors brought the horse forward. Cross pulled himself into the saddle with the last of his strength and turned the animal north. As he rode away, he heard Tavo call out behind him. "Lawman!" Cross turned in the saddle. "The white man you seek, he is poison. Even now, bound and wounded, he will bring death to those around him. Kill him before he kills you." Cross said nothing. He just nodded once and rode on. The sun was setting by the time he caught up with Lena and Silas. They'd made camp in a sheltered canyon, Ryder tied to a tree, still unconscious. Lena was pacing, rifle in hand, when Cross rode in. She ran to him as he dismounted. "You're alive." "Barely. You're bleeding everywhere." "I noticed." She helped him to the fire. Silas was there, his leg bandaged, a bottle of whiskey in his hand. He offered it to Cross. "You actually beat Tavo in single combat." Cross took a long pull from the bottle, felt the burn all the way down. "I got lucky." "Luck nothing. I've seen men fight. That wasn't luck. That was—" Silas paused, searching for the word. "That was something else." Cross handed back the bottle. "Is he still breathing?" He nodded toward Ryder. Lena checked. "Yeah, weak but alive. He'll make it to Fort Whitman if we keep moving." "Then we move at dawn." Cross leaned back against a rock, every inch of his body aching. "Silas, you still want your bounty?" "That's why I'm here." "Then you ride with us to the fort, turn him in there, collect your money." Silas raised an eyebrow. "You're not taking him in yourself?" "I'm done." Cross closed his eyes. "I did what I came to do. Tavo knows it. Ryder knows it. Now I just want to make sure he faces a rope instead of a bullet." Lena sat down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "What did Tavo say to you? At the end?" Cross opened his eyes, looked at Ryder's unconscious form. "He said Ryder's poison, that I should kill him before he kills me." "Maybe you should." "Maybe." Cross was quiet for a moment. "But I've killed enough people in my life. Just once, I'd like to do this the right way. Let the law decide instead of my gun." "The law is just men in robes making judgments. Your gun's more honest." "You sound like someone I used to know." "Your father?" "No, me, 10 years ago." Cross turned to look at her. "But I'm trying to be different now. Trying to be better." Lena studied his face in the firelight, the cuts, the bruises, the exhaustion carved into every line. "You think it's working?" "I don't know." Ask me when this is over. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, for what it's worth, I think you're already better than most. Cross didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. He just sat there beside her, listening to the crackle of the fire and the distant howl of coyotes, and let himself believe, just for a moment, that maybe she was right. They broke camp at dawn. Ryder was conscious now, feverish and mean, spitting curses at Cross every chance he got. Cross ignored him. So did Lena. Silas just laughed. You know, the bounty hunter said as they rode, I've hauled in a lot of men over the years. Killers, thieves, rapists. But I never met one who hated his captor as much as Ryder hates you. It's mutual. Is it? Silas glanced at him. Because from where I sit, you don't hate him, you pity him. Cross was silent. That's worse, you know, Silas continued. Hate, a man can understand. Hate makes sense. But pity? That cuts deeper than any bullet. You a philosopher now? Just observant. They rode through country that gradually shifted from desert to scrubland to rolling hills dotted with juniper and sage. On the second day, they passed a burned-out homestead, recent, the ashes still warm. Apaches, probably, or outlaws. The frontier was bleeding from 100 wounds, and men like Ryder were the infection. On the third day, Fort Whitman came into view. It sat on a rise overlooking a river valley, a cluster of wooden buildings surrounded by a high palisade wall. The American flag hung limp in the still air. Smoke rose from cook fires. Cross could see soldiers moving on the walls, tiny figures at this distance. There it is, Silas said. End of the line. They approached slowly, hands visible, no sudden moves. A patrol rode out to meet them, 6 cavalry troopers led by a young lieutenant with a sunburned face and nervous eyes. State your business, the lieutenant said, his hand on his pistol. Cross reached slowly for his badge, showed it. U.S. Marshal Ethan Cross. I've got a prisoner for you, Ryder Kane, wanted for murder, robbery, and selling weapons to hostiles. The lieutenant's eyes widened. Ryder Kane? We've been looking for him for months. Well, you found him, or I did. Cross gestured to Ryder, still tied to his horse, looking more dead than alive. He needs a doctor and a cell, in that order. The lieutenant nodded, called to his men. 2 troopers dismounted, cut Ryder loose, half-carried him toward the fort. Ryder managed to turn his head as they dragged him past Cross. His voice was a rasp, barely audible. This isn't over, Marshal. You think you've won, but you haven't. You'll never be free of me. Cross met his gaze, steady. You're wrong. I'm already free. You're the one in chains. Ryder's eyes burned with hate, but he had no more words. The soldiers took him inside. The lieutenant turned back to Cross. You'll need to come in, make a statement for the record. I know the drill. They rode into the fort. Inside, it was organized chaos, soldiers drilling, wagons being loaded, women hanging laundry, children running between the buildings. Normal life, somehow persisting in the middle of all this violence. Cross gave his statement to the fort commander, a grizzled colonel named Brennan who looked like he'd seen too much and trusted too little. Cross laid out the facts, the ambush in Ashford, the chase through the territories, the deal with Tavo, the fight in the pass. Brennan listened without interrupting. When Cross finished, the colonel leaned back in his chair. You're telling me you convinced Tavo to stand down? To not use those weapons? For now. How long will that last? Until someone else comes along and makes him a better offer. Cross met the colonel's eyes. You want my advice? Send a patrol to Red Canyon. Find Mateo Vega. He's the one brokering these deals. Cut off the supply, you cut off the problem. And if Vega won't cooperate, then you do what needs doing. Brennan nodded slowly. I'll consider it. He stood, extended his hand. Good work, Marshal. The frontier needs more men like you. Cross shook his hand but said nothing. He didn't feel like a good man. He felt like a man who'd walked through fire and come out the other side burned and hollow. Outside, Lena was waiting by the horses. Silas had already collected his bounty from the fort's paymaster and was preparing to ride out. Where will you go? Cross asked him. Silas grinned, patted his saddlebag where the money rested. Somewhere with good whiskey and bad women. Maybe California. Maybe Mexico. Wherever the next bounty takes me. He tipped his hat. Been interesting, Marshal. Don't die before I see you again. I'll try. Silas rode out through the gate, whistling. Cross turned to Lena. She was staring at the fort gates, at the world beyond, her expression unreadable. "What about you?" he asked. "Where will you go?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "I don't know. I've been running for so long I'm not sure I remember how to stand still." "You could stay here. The fort takes on help sometimes. Laundry, cooking. It's not glamorous, but it's safe." Lena laughed, short and bitter. "Safe. That's a word I haven't used in years." She turned to look at him. "What about you, Marshal? Back to the badge and the blood." Cross thought about it. About Tom. About his father. About all the men he'd killed and all the ones still out there who needed killing. "I don't know," he said honestly. "For 15 years this is all I've known, but maybe it's time for something different." "Like what?" "I've got a piece of land. Up north, near the Montana border. Bought it years ago. Never did anything with it. Just a cabin and some grass. Thought maybe I'd try my hand at ranching, build something instead of tearing things down." Lena studied him. "You don't strike me as the ranching type." "Neither do you, but maybe that's the point." She was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Then, "If someone were to ride north with you, hypothetically, what would they find?" "Hard work, long winters, a lot of nothing." "Sounds terrible." "It does. But different. Very different." Lena looked away toward the horizon, toward all the places she'd been and all the places she hadn't. "I'll think about it." "Take your time." Cross mounted his horse. "I'll be leaving at dawn. If you're here, you ride with me. If not, I wish you well." He started toward the gate. Behind him, Lena called out, "Cross!" He turned in the saddle. "Thank you for not leaving me in that arroyo, for not giving up on doing the right thing, even when the wrong thing would have been easier." Her voice was quiet but steady. "You're a good man whether you believe it or not." Cross nodded once, then rode on. That night, he slept in a cot in the officers' quarters, but rest didn't come easy. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Tom's face, riders, tahvos, the dead men in the pass, the burned wagon, all of it, stacking up like cordwood, ready to ignite. He rose before dawn and saddled his horse by lantern light. The fort was still sleeping, the only sounds the wind and the creak of the gate as the guard opened it for him. Cross rode through into the gray pre-dawn light. He was maybe 100 yards out when he heard the sound of hoofbeats behind him. He turned. Lena rode up beside him, her rifle slung across her back, her face set with determination. "I thought about it," she said. Cross looked at her. "And?" "Hard work, long winters, and a lot of nothing sounds better than anything else I've got lined up." A slow smile spread across Cross's face, the first real one in longer than he could remember. "Then let's ride." They turned their horses north, toward Montana, toward a future neither of them could quite believe in yet, but were willing to try for. Behind them, the fort grew smaller, then disappeared over the horizon. Ahead, the mountains rose like promises against the lightening sky. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cross felt something he'd almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. But hope, Cross had learned, was a fragile thing in a world built on violence. They rode for 3 days through country that gradually transformed from scrubland to pine forest, the air growing cooler, cleaner. At night they camped under stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. Lena proved herself capable. She could track, hunt, read weather signs in the clouds. She didn't talk much about her past, and Cross didn't press. They were both trying to leave ghosts behind. On the 4th morning, they crested a ridge, and Cross pulled up his horse. Below, a valley stretched green and wide, bisected by a silver thread of river. At the far end, nestled against a stand of aspens, sat a small cabin. "That's it," he said quietly. Lena studied the property. "It's remote." "That's the idea. No neighbors for miles. Closest town is 2 days' ride east." She looked at him. "You planning to become a hermit, Marshal?" "Planning to become a rancher? There's a difference." "Not much of one from where I'm sitting." They rode down into the valley. As they got closer, Cross could see that the years had not been kind to the place. The cabin's roof sagged in one corner, several window panes were broken, and the corral fence had collapsed in sections. Weeds grew waist-high in what had once been a vegetable garden. Lena dismounted, walked a slow circle around the cabin. When's the last time anyone lived here? 5 years, maybe 6. I bought it from a widow heading back east, kept meaning to come back, fix it up. Cross swung down from his saddle. Never had the time. Or the reason. That too. Inside, the cabin was dusty but structurally sound. One large room with a stone fireplace, a smaller room that could serve as a bedroom, a loft overhead. Mice had made nests in the corners, and birds had gotten in through the broken windows, but nothing that couldn't be fixed. Lena ran her hand along the windowsill, came away with a palm full of dust. It'll need work. Everything worth having does. She turned to face him. You really think you can do this? Trade the badge for a plow? Cross looked around the cabin, trying to imagine a different life, trying to see himself waking up to tend cattle instead of chasing killers. I don't know, but I'd like to try. And if it doesn't work, if you wake up one day and realize you missed the chase, then I'll deal with it. He met her eyes. But I'm tired, Lena. Tired of blood. Tired of violence. Tired of seeing the worst parts of people every single day. His voice was quiet, steady. I need to find out if there's something else inside me besides the Marshal, something that can build instead of destroy. Lena held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. All right. Then we'd better get to work. They spent the first week making the place livable. Cross repaired the roof while Lena patched the windows with oilcloth they'd bought from a trader they'd passed on the trail. They cleared out the debris, scrubbed the floors, fixed the corral fence. The work was hard, physical, completely different from anything Cross had done in years. He found he didn't mind. There was something clean about working with his hands, about building something tangible. Every nail he drove, every board he fitted, felt like a small act of defiance against all the destruction he'd caused. Lena worked beside him without complaint, though he could see her wound still bothered her. She moved carefully, favoring her left side, but she never quit. By the end of the first week, the cabin looked almost livable. On the 8th day, Cross rode to the nearest town, a settlement called Timber Creek, to buy supplies. He returned with lumber, nails, seeds for planting, and 2 head of cattle he'd bought from a rancher looking to thin his herd. He also returned with news that turned his blood cold. Lena saw his face as he dismounted. What happened? Cross tied his horse, his movements tight, controlled. Ryder escaped. The words hung in the air like smoke. Lena's hand moved instinctively to her pistol. When? 4 days ago. Killed 2 guards at Fort Whitman, stole a horse, disappeared into the territories. Cross's jaw was tight. Colonel Brennan sent word to every marshal and sheriff within 200 miles. They're hunting him, but so far nothing. He's wounded. Half dead when we brought him in. How could he? He's Ryder. Cross's voice was flat. Wounded, half dead. Doesn't matter. He's like a damn cockroach. Nothing kills him. Lena studied Cross's face. You think he'll come here? It wasn't a question. Cross was silent for a moment. Then, I know he will. He's got unfinished business with me, and Ryder doesn't leave debts unpaid. How long do we have? Hard to say. He doesn't know about this place. I never told anyone. But if he asks the right questions, leans on the right people. Cross shook his head. Could be weeks, could be days. Lena's expression hardened. Then we prepare. They spent the next 3 days turning the cabin into a fortress. Cross reinforced the doors with heavy timber, fashioned shutters for the windows that could be barred from inside. He set up firing positions that covered all approaches to the cabin. Lena helped him dig a shallow trench around the perimeter and filled it with caltrops, sharp metal spikes that would cripple any horse that stepped on them. They stockpiled ammunition, food, water, planned escape routes if things went bad. Cross even rigged a rope from the loft window down to the tree line in case they needed to flee fast. Through it all, neither of them spoke about the obvious question, why not just leave? But Cross knew the answer, even if he didn't say it aloud. Running wouldn't solve anything. Ryder would keep coming, keep hunting, until one of them was dead. Better to face it here on ground Cross knew, with defenses in place. Better to end it. On the 4th night after Cross returned from Timber Creek, they sat by the fire in the cabin cleaning their weapons. Outside, wind howled through the pines, and somewhere in the distance thunder rumbled. Storm's coming, Lena said quietly. Cross nodded. Be here by midnight. Good cover if someone wanted to approach without being seen. I know. Cross set down his rifle, looked at her. You don't have to stay. You could ride out. Head to Timber Creek. Be safe. Lena's eyes flashed. You offering me an out? I'm offering you a choice. I already made my choice when I rode north with you. She went back to cleaning her pistol. Besides, I've got my own score to settle with Ryder. He killed good people on that wagon train, people who trusted me to get them through safely. Her voice was hard. I'm not running. Cross almost smiled. Stubborn. Takes one to know one. They fell into comfortable silence, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and the whisper of cloth on steel. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Cross stood, walked to the window, peered through a gap in the wood. The sky was bruised purple, lightning flickering in the distance. The storm was closer than he'd thought. You ever wonder, Lena said from behind him, if any of this is worth it? All the fighting, the blood, the trying to be better? Cross turned to look at her. Every day. And what do you decide? That I'm still breathing, that I haven't turned into my father, that maybe, just maybe, there's still a chance to be something other than what I've been. He paused. That's worth fighting for. Lena was quiet for a moment, then, I never told you this, but after I left my husband, I thought about ending it, just riding out into the desert and not coming back. Her voice was soft, almost too quiet to hear over the storm. I thought the world would be better off without one more broken person in it. What stopped you? Stubbornness, mostly. The idea that he'd won if I gave up. She looked up, met his eyes. And then I kept going because I didn't know what else to do. Kept running, kept surviving, kept pretending it all meant something. Does it? I'm starting to think it might. She stood, walked to stand beside him at the window. You make me think it might. Cross didn't know what to say to that, so he just reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. They stood like that for a long time, watching the storm roll in, feeling the first drops of rain begin to fall. Then Cross stiffened. What? Lena's hand went to her gun. Movement, tree line, north side. Lena squinted through the gap. I don't see... The window exploded inward. Cross tackled Lena to the floor as gunfire erupted, bullets chewing through the walls, splintering wood. He rolled, grabbed his rifle, fired blind toward the window. How many? Lena shouted over the chaos. Don't know! Cross crawled to the next window, risked a glance. Muzzle flashes in the darkness. 3, maybe 4 positions. At least 4 shooters. More gunfire. The front door shuddered under impact. Someone was trying to kick it in. Cross fired through the door, heard a scream. The kicking stopped. Lena took position at the east window, started shooting. 2 on this side. Cross's mind raced. 6 shooters, maybe more. They were surrounded. If they stayed here, they'd be pinned down until Ryder's men overran them. If they ran, they'd be cut down in the open. Unless... The loft! Cross shouted. Go! Lena didn't argue. She scrambled up the ladder as Cross laid down covering fire. He emptied his rifle, dropped it, pulled his pistol, kept shooting. From the loft, Lena opened up with her Winchester, firing through gaps in the roof. Cross heard someone outside curse, then another scream. He grabbed his rifle, reloaded, climbed the ladder. In the loft, Lena had kicked out several loose boards, creating firing positions that covered 3 sides of the cabin. Smart, Cross said. I learned from the best. She fired again. We can't hold them forever. Don't have to. Just long enough. Long enough for what? Before Cross could answer, a voice cut through the storm. Familiar, hateful, carrying over the rain and gunfire. Cross, I know you can hear me. Ryder. Cross moved to the loft window, peered out. Ryder stood at the edge of the tree line, maybe 50 yards away, illuminated by lightning. His arm was still bandaged from his shoulder wound, but he held a rifle in his good hand. You made a mistake, Marshal, Ryder shouted. Should have killed me when you had the chance. Cross said nothing. He just aimed, squeezed the trigger. The shot missed. Ryder dove behind a tree. When he emerged, he was laughing. Close, but not close enough. He fired twice. Both bullets punched through the roof near Cross's head. You can't win this. You know that, right? I've got 8 men out here. You've got you and the woman. This only ends one way. Lena looked at Cross. Is he bluffing about the numbers? Maybe. Doesn't matter. Cross reloaded methodically. Ryder's the target. We take him down, the rest will scatter. And how do you plan to do that when he's hiding behind a tree? I get him to come out. Before Lena could stop him, Cross stood and shouted through the window. You want me, Ryder? Come get me, just you and me, like it should have been from the start. Ryder's laughter echoed across the clearing. You think I'm stupid? You think I'm going to walk into your sights for some noble showdown? I think you're a coward who hides behind other men. Cross's voice cut through the storm like a blade. I think you talk big, but when it comes down to it, you're scared. Scared that in a fair fight I'd put you in the ground. The rain hammered down. Lightning split the sky. Then Ryder stepped out from behind the tree. All right, Marshal. His voice was cold, deadly calm. You want this so bad? Let's finish it. Just you and me. No guns, just blades, like you fought Tahvo. Why would I trust you? Because if I wanted you dead by bullet, you'd already be bleeding out. Ryder spread his arms. I want you to feel it, Cross. I want you to know it's coming, same way Tom knew. Rage flared in Cross's chest, white-hot and blinding. He started toward the ladder. Lena grabbed his arm. Don't! It's a trap. I know. Then why? Because he's right. This has to end. Cross met her eyes. And it has to be between him and me. He'll kill you. Maybe. Cross pulled free gently. But if I don't do this, we die anyway. At least this way, you have a chance. What chance? When we engage, his men will watch. They'll want to see the show. That's when you run. Take the rope from the back window, head for the horses, ride for Timber Creek. Don't look back. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. Cross's voice was hard, final. Because if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to face him, I need to know you're going to survive. That's what keeps me fighting. Understand? Lena's eyes were bright with tears she refused to shed. You're an idiot. I know. He almost smiled. But I'm your idiot. He kissed her, quick, fierce, full of everything he couldn't say. Then he pulled away and climbed down the ladder before she could stop him. At the door, he paused, took off his gun belt, set it aside, drew his knife, the same Bowie he'd carried for 15 years. He opened the door and walked out into the storm. Ryder was waiting in the center of the clearing, the rain plastering his hair to his skull, his shirt soaked through. He'd drawn a long hunting knife, and even in the darkness, Cross could see the gleam of it. Around the perimeter, Ryder's men emerged from cover. Cross counted 6, all watching. Lena had been right. It was a trap. But it was also the only way. Cross walked forward until he stood 10 feet from Ryder. Just us, no interference. Agreed. Ryder grinned. Though I'm not sure it'll matter. You're older, slower, and I'm angrier. Anger makes you sloppy. We'll see. They circled each other, boots squelching in the mud. Lightning illuminated them in frozen snapshots. 2 men, 2 knives, 15 years of history about to be written in blood. Ryder attacked first, fast and vicious, the knife aimed at Cross's throat. Cross blocked with his forearm, felt the blade scrape across bone. He countered with a slash toward Ryder's ribs. Ryder twisted away. They broke apart, circling. You know what the difference is between you and me? Ryder said, breathing hard. You think you're better. You think the badge makes you righteous. But we're the same, Cross. We both kill. We both destroy. You're just better at lying to yourself about it. Cross didn't answer. He lunged, feinted left, went right. His knife opened a cut across Ryder's forearm. Blood mixed with rain. Ryder laughed, wild and unhinged. First blood to you, but last blood's mine. He came in hard, a flurry of strikes, high, low, diagonal. Cross blocked, parried, gave ground. His boot slipped in the mud. Ryder seized the opening, drove his knee into Cross's gut. Air exploded from Cross's lungs. He went down to one knee. Ryder's knife came down in an overhead arc. Cross rolled left. The blade buried itself in the mud where his head had been. Cross surged up, drove his shoulder into Ryder's chest, sent them both crashing down. They grappled in the mud, each trying to control the other's knife hand. Ryder was strong, fueled by hate and madness. Cross was tired, battered from too many fights. But Cross had something Ryder didn't, a reason to live. He thought of Lena, of the cabin, of the life they could build if he survived this. He thought of Tom, of the promise he'd made to do this the right way. He thought of every ghost that haunted him and decided, right there in the mud and rain, that he was done being haunted. He was going to live. Cross headbutted Ryder, breaking the outlaw's nose for the second time. Ryder's grip loosened. Cross twisted, brought his knife around, drove it into Ryder's side. Ryder screamed. Cross pulled the knife free, drove it in again, and again. Ryder fell back, gasping, blood pouring from 3 wounds. He tried to rise, couldn't. His knife fell from nerveless fingers. Cross stood over him, chest heaving, covered in mud and blood and rain. Ryder looked up at him, eyes wide, shocked. You actually... I told you, Cross said quietly. This ends tonight. He raised his knife for the final strike. Gunfire erupted. Cross spun. Ryder's men were shooting, not at him, but past him, toward the cabin, toward Lena. She'd emerged from the back, was running for the horses. 2 of Ryder's men were chasing her, firing as they ran. Cross didn't think. He grabbed Ryder's fallen rifle, brought it up, fired. The first man went down. The second turned toward Cross. Cross shot him through the chest. But there were still 4 others, and they were all converging on Lena. Cross ran. He crossed the clearing in a dead sprint, firing as he went. 1 shot, 2, 3. Each one found its mark. By the time he reached Lena, 3 more of Ryder's men were down. The last one, a young kid, maybe 19, stood frozen, rifle raised but shaking. "Drop it," Cross said, his own rifle trained on the kid's chest. The kid looked at the bodies around them, at Ryder, bleeding out in the mud, at Cross, standing there like death incarnate. He dropped the rifle and ran. Cross let him go. He turned to Lena. "You all right?" She nodded, breathing hard. "You?" Still standing. They walked back across the clearing together. Ryder was still alive, barely. He lay in the mud, hands pressed to his wounds, blood seeping through his fingers. Cross knelt beside him. "It's over." Ryder coughed blood. "You should have left me in the desert, probably. Should have killed me on that ledge. Maybe." Ryder's eyes focused on Cross's face. "Why didn't you?" Cross was quiet for a long moment, then, "Because I wanted to be better than you. Better than what you tried to make me." "Did it work?" Cross looked down at the knife still in his hand, at the blood on his clothes, at the bodies scattered across his land. Then he looked at Lena, standing there alive, waiting. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I'm still trying." Ryder's laugh was wet, dying. "Good luck with that." His eyes went distant. His breathing stopped. Cross stood slowly. Around them, the storm was already passing, the rain lightening to a drizzle. Dawn wasn't far off. Lena moved to his side. "What now?" Cross looked at the cabin, at the valley, at the mountains rising in the distance. "Now we bury them. Clean this place up. Start over." "You think we can?" "I think we have to." He turned to her. "I'm done running, Lena. Done fighting. This is my stand, right here in this valley, and I'd like you to stand with me." Lena studied his face for a long moment. Then she took his hand. "All right, let's build something." They stood together in the breaking dawn, 2 broken people trying to become whole. And for the first time in either of their lives, the future looked like something worth fighting for. They buried the dead before the sun was fully up. Cross dug the graves himself, refusing Lena's offer to help. 7 graves in total, 6 for Ryder's men, 1 set apart for Ryder himself. He didn't mark them, didn't say words over them, just filled the holes and walked away, leaving the earth to reclaim what belonged to it. Lena watched from the cabin porch, her rifle across her lap, keeping watch in case that kid who'd run came back with friends. But the valley remained quiet, empty except for the 2 of them and the ghosts they were trying to leave behind. When Cross finished, he walked to the river and washed the blood and mud from his hands. The water was cold, clear, rushing over smooth stones that had been there long before him and would remain long after. There was something comforting in that permanence, something that made the violence of the night before feel smaller, more distant. He returned to the cabin to find Lena had made coffee. She handed him a cup without a word. They sat together on the porch steps, watching the valley come alive in the morning light, birds calling, deer emerging from the tree line to drink at the river, the wind moving through the grass like invisible hands. "You should ride to Timber Creek," Cross said after a while. "Report what happened. They'll want to know Ryder's dead." "We could both go." Cross shook his head. "Someone needs to stay here. Make sure no one disturbs the graves, or worse, comes back looking for revenge." "You think they will?" "I don't know, but I'm not taking chances." He sipped his coffee. "Besides, I need time to think, to figure out what comes next." Lena looked at him. "I thought we already decided that. We're building something here." "We said we'd try. That's different from deciding." Cross set down his cup. "You've seen what I am now, what I'm capable of. Last night wasn't the law. That was just killing. And I need to know if I can be anything other than that." "You're more than that already." "Am I?" Cross's voice was quiet, haunted. "I've been telling myself for years that the badge made a difference, that I was different from men like Ryder because I had the law on my side. But when it came down to it, we settled things the same way, with blades and blood. You gave him chances, multiple chances. He didn't take them. Doesn't change what I am." Lena was silent for a long moment. Then she set her own cup aside and turned to face him fully. "You want to know the difference between you and Ryder? It's not the badge. It's not the law. It's this, right here, right now. You're questioning yourself, wondering if you did the right thing, trying to be better." Her voice was fierce. "Ryder never questioned anything. He took what he wanted and destroyed what got in his way. You fight to protect, to build. That's the difference." Cross looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something in her eyes that he'd been too afraid to name before. Trust. Not just in him, but in the possibility of something more. "You should still go to Timber Creek," he said finally. "Get supplies while you're there. Seeds, maybe some chickens. If we're doing this, we need to do it right." Lena smiled, a real smile, not the hard, bitter thing she usually wore. "All right, but you'd better be here when I get back." "Where else would I go?" She stood, squeezed his shoulder once, then went to saddle her horse. Cross watched her ride out, disappearing into the tree line, and felt something shift inside him. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he wasn't alone. And maybe that was enough to start building on. He spent the day working, repairing the damage from the gunfight, replacing shattered boards, cleaning blood from the porch. Physical work that kept his hands busy and his mind from wandering too deep into dark places. By evening, the cabin looked almost normal again. You'd never know 7 men had died here unless you counted the fresh-turned earth at the edge of the property. Cross made a simple dinner, beans and salt pork, bread he'd baked in the fireplace, and sat alone at the small table he'd built. The silence was heavy, but not oppressive. Just quiet. The kind of quiet he'd been chasing for 15 years without realizing it. He was cleaning his plate when he heard it, hoofbeats, approaching fast. Cross grabbed his rifle, moved to the window. Not Lena. She wouldn't be back until tomorrow at the earliest. Someone else. He watched through the gap in the shutters as a rider emerged from the trees. Not the kid from last night. Someone older, heavier, wearing a long duster coat. Silas Crow. Cross relaxed slightly but kept the rifle ready. He opened the door as the bounty hunter dismounted. "Silas, didn't expect to see you again." Silas tied his horse, looked around the property with sharp, assessing eyes. "Heard there was trouble out this way. Ryder Kane's men tearing up the countryside. Figured I'd ride out, see if you were still breathing." "Barely." "Ryder?" Cross gestured toward the graves. "Him and 6 others, dead as they're going to get." Silas whistled low. "You've been busy." He looked at Cross. "You all right?" "Define all right." The bounty hunter almost smiled. "Fair enough." He pulled a leather pouch from his saddlebag, tossed it to Cross. It landed heavy in his hands, the weight of coins. "Your share. From the bounty on Ryder." Cross opened the pouch, saw the glint of gold. I didn't ask for this. Didn't have to. You brought him in the first time. That counts. Silas leaned against his horse. Besides, I figure you can use it. Starting a ranch isn't cheap. How'd you know about that? I'm a bounty hunter. Information's my business. Silas's expression turned serious. But that's not the only reason I'm here. There's talk in the territories. About you. Cross's jaw tightened. What kind of talk? The kind that says U.S. Marshal Ethan Cross has gone rogue, that you killed Ryder Kane outside the law, that you're holed up in the mountains, dangerous. Silas shook his head. The Marshal Service is asking questions. They want you to come in, explain what happened. And if I don't, then they'll send someone to bring you in, forcibly, if necessary. Silas met his eyes. You need to get ahead of this, Cross. Go to them before they come to you. Tell your side of the story. Cross looked at the cabin, at the valley, at everything he'd started to build. And if they don't believe me, if they decide I crossed a line, then you'll face whatever comes, but at least you'll face it on your terms, not theirs. Cross was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. When do they want me? Soon as you can get there. Regional office in Helena. Silas straightened. I can ride with you if you want, vouch for what I saw. You'd do that? You're not the only one trying to be better than you were, Marshal. Silas swung back into his saddle. I'll be in Timber Creek for the next 3 days. If you decide to go, find me there. If not, he shrugged. Well, good luck with the farming. He rode off, leaving Cross alone with a pouch of gold and a decision that would determine everything that came after. Lena returned the next afternoon, her horse loaded with supplies, seeds, tools, 2 crates of chickens that clucked indignantly at every bump in the trail. She pulled up in front of the cabin, saw Cross's face, and knew immediately something had changed. What happened? Cross told her about Silas's visit, about the Marshal Service, about the choice he had to make. Lena listened without interrupting. When he finished, she dismounted and started unloading supplies. So go. Just like that? You think running from this will make it better? You think hiding out here will make the questions go away? She set down a crate, turned to face him. You told me you wanted to do things the right way. This is the right way. Face them. Tell the truth. Let them decide. And if they decide I'm guilty, then we'll deal with it, together. She stepped closer. But I don't think they will. You fought by the law for 15 years. One deviation, under extreme circumstances, in self-defense. That's not corruption. That's survival. Cross wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that the system he'd served for so long would see him clearly, would understand that everything he'd done had been necessary. But he'd seen too many good men broken by bureaucracy, too many careers ended by politics and perception. Still, Lena was right. Running wouldn't solve anything. It would just make him into something he wasn't, a fugitive, no better than the men he'd spent his life hunting. All right, he said finally. I'll go. But you stay here. Keep working on the ranch. If things go south, I'll be right there beside you. Lena's voice was steel. We're partners now, Cross, for better or worse. You don't get to shut me out when things get hard. Cross looked at her. This woman who'd ridden into his life bleeding and broken, who'd somehow become the strongest person he knew, and felt something in his chest unclench. Partners, he agreed. They spent the next 2 days preparing. Cross wrote out a full account of everything that had happened from the moment Ryder took hostages in Ashford to the fight in the valley. Every detail, every decision, every body. He didn't try to justify or excuse, just facts laid out cold and clear. Lena organized the ranch, setting up systems that could run even if they were gone for weeks. She planted the first seeds in the garden, set the chickens up in a reinforced coop, marked out where they'd build the barn when funds allowed. On the 3rd morning, they rode out together, leaving the valley behind. The cabin looked small and fragile in the distance, like something that might disappear if they blinked. But it was still there when Cross looked back one last time before the trees swallowed the view. They reached Timber Creek by evening. Silas was waiting at the saloon, drinking whiskey and playing cards with 3 men who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Marshal, Silas said, standing. Glad you came to your senses. Don't celebrate yet. They might still hang me. Doubt it. But stranger things have happened. Silas threw some coins on the table, ignoring the protests of the other players. We leave at dawn. It's a 4-day ride to Helena. They set out at first light, the three of them riding through country that shifted from mountains to plains to river valleys. Cross had traveled these roads before, chasing outlaws, delivering prisoners. But this time felt different. This time, he was the one being questioned. On the third day, they passed Fort Whitman. Cross could see the new guards on the walls, younger men, more alert after Ryder's escape. Colonel Brennan came out to meet them. Marshal Cross. The colonel's face was carefully neutral. I heard you were coming. Word travels fast. In these territories, it has to. Brennan glanced at Lena and Silas. The inquiry board wants to hear from anyone who witnessed what happened. If you two are willing to testify, we are, Lena said firmly. Brennan nodded. Good. The hearing's set for 2 days from now. They've got a federal judge coming in from the capital, a couple of senior marshals. They'll hear all sides, then make their decision. And until then, you're free to move around. But don't leave the territory. Brennan's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, Cross, I think you did what had to be done. Ryder was a mad dog. Someone had to put him down. Appreciate that, Colonel. They rode on, reaching Helena the next afternoon. The territorial capital was bigger than Cross remembered. New buildings going up on every corner, streets crowded with miners, merchants, settlers. The frontier was changing, civilizing, and Cross wasn't sure how he felt about that. The hearing was held in a converted warehouse that served as a courthouse until the real one was finished. Cross arrived early, Lena and Silas flanking him. Inside, 3 men sat behind a long table. Judge Marcus Hale, a gray-haired man with eyes like flint, Marshal Samuel Tucker, Cross's former supervisor, and Marshal James Cord, a younger man Cross had worked with briefly years ago. The room was packed, townspeople, other marshals, even some reporters from the territorial newspapers. Everyone wanted to see if the legendary Ethan Cross would fall. Judge Hale called the hearing to order. This inquiry is convened to investigate the circumstances surrounding the death of Ryder Kane and 6 associates at the property of former U.S. Marshal Ethan Cross. Marshal Cross, you've submitted a written statement. Is there anything you'd like to add? Cross stood. No, Your Honor. The statement's complete. Very well. We'll hear testimony from witnesses, then deliberate. Hale looked at the crowd. First witness, Silas Crow. Silas took the stand and laid out what he'd seen. The ambush in the pass, Cross's decision to bring Ryder in alive, the fight in the valley. His testimony was clear, factual, damning to Ryder, and supportive of Cross. When he finished, Marshal Cord leaned forward. Mr. Crow, you're a bounty hunter. You had a financial interest in Ryder Kane's capture. How do we know you're not just protecting your investment? Silas smiled coldly. Because I got paid either way, Marshal, dead or alive. If anything, dead was easier, less transport costs. He looked at Cross. But Marshal Cross wanted to do it right. Wanted Kane to stand trial. I respected that, even if it cost me convenience. Next was Lena. She described the wagon train massacre being shot by Ryder, Cross's rescue. Her voice never wavered, even when describing the horrors she'd witnessed. Marshal Tucker asked her, Miss Vale, you were present during the final confrontation. Did Marshal Cross have any choice but to use lethal force? No, sir. Ryder and his men attacked first. They came with intent to kill. Marshal Cross defended himself and me. That's all. Did he seem to enjoy it? Take pleasure in the violence? Lena's eyes flashed. No, he seemed tired, sad even. Like a man doing something necessary but awful. Finally, Cross himself took the stand. Judge Hale questioned him for over an hour. Every decision, every choice, every moment from Ashford to the valley. Cross answered truthfully, holding nothing back. When it was over, Hale leaned back in his chair. Marshal Cross, you had Ryder Kane in custody once. You could have executed him then and claimed self-defense. Why didn't you? Cross met the judge's eyes. Because I wanted to believe the law still meant something. That we could be better than the men we hunt. And yet you killed him anyway. He came to my home, tried to kill me and Miss Vale. I defended myself. Cross's voice was steady. But I didn't hunt him down, didn't seek revenge. He brought the fight to me. Some would say you should have anticipated that by letting him live, you endangered everyone around you. Some would be right. Cross didn't flinch. But if I executed every prisoner who might escape, I'd be no better than the outlaws I chase. There has to be a line, Your Honor, even if crossing it would be easier. Judge Hale studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. The board will deliberate. We'll have a decision by morning. They reconvened the next day. The courtroom was even more crowded than before, word having spread through Helena that a verdict was imminent. Judge Hale stood. This board has reviewed all testimony and evidence. We've considered the character of Marshal Ethan Cross, his 15 years of distinguished service, and the circumstances surrounding Ryder Kane's death. He paused. We find that Marshal Cross acted in lawful self-defense. No charges will be filed. The courtroom erupted. Some cheering, some protesting. Cross barely heard it. He was too focused on the weight lifting from his shoulders, the breath finally filling his lungs. But Hale wasn't finished. He raised his hand for silence. However, this board also finds that Marshal Cross's methods, while legal, demonstrate a pattern of excessive risk-taking and personal involvement that is incompatible with continued service as a U.S. Marshal. Cross's stomach dropped. Effective immediately, Ethan Cross is relieved of his badge and commission. His service is noted with honor, but his employment is terminated. The room went silent. Marshal Tucker stood, objecting. Your Honor, that's final, Hale said firmly. Marshal Cross, you've served with distinction, but the job has taken its toll. It's time you found another path. His expression softened slightly. Consider this a mercy, not a punishment. Cross stood slowly. He unpinned his badge, the weight of it familiar in his palm after 15 years. He set it on the table. Yes, Your Honor. He walked out of the courthouse, Lena and Silas following. Outside, the late afternoon sun painted Helena in gold and amber. Cross stood on the steps, feeling oddly light, unmoored. Lena touched his arm. You all right? Cross looked at the badge still visible through the courthouse window, reflecting light. Then he looked at Lena, at the mountains in the distance, at the road that would take them back to the valley. Yeah, he said, and realized it was true. I think I am. They stayed in Helena one more night, then headed back. The ride seemed shorter this time, lighter. Cross found himself noticing things he'd missed before. Wildflowers growing in impossible places, the way light filtered through pine branches, a hawk riding thermals overhead. When they finally crested the ridge and looked down into the valley, the cabin was still there, exactly as they'd left it. Smoke rose from a campfire. Someone was there. Cross's hand moved to his gun, but Lena shook her head. Look at the horses. Cross looked. 3 horses in the corral, theirs and one other. A cavalry mount. They rode down cautiously. As they approached, a figure emerged from the cabin. Colonel Brennan. Colonel, Cross said, dismounting. Wasn't expecting company. Brennan smiled. Thought I'd check on the place. Make sure no one disturbed it while you were gone. He gestured to the cabin. I also took the liberty of fixing that leaky roof corner. Hope you don't mind. Not at all. Cross shook his hand. Thank you. Heard about the hearing, about the badge. Brennan's expression was sympathetic. Rough break. Maybe, maybe not. Cross looked around the valley. I'm starting to think this is where I was meant to end up anyway. Well, if you need anything, supplies, manpower, protection, Fort Whitman's just a few days' ride. We take care of our own. Appreciate that, Colonel. Brennan mounted his horse. One more thing. Tavo sent a message. Wanted you to know the guns are still silent. He's keeping his word. Cross nodded. Good to know. The colonel rode out, leaving Cross and Lena alone in the valley. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of copper and rose. Cross stood in front of the cabin, looking at what they'd started to build, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. So, Lena said, standing beside him. What now? Cross thought about it. About the graves at the edge of the property, slowly being reclaimed by grass. About Tom Garrett, buried somewhere far from here with a widow who'd never see justice but might find peace. About Ryder Kane, whose hate had consumed him so completely there was nothing left but ash. And about himself, a man who'd worn a badge for 15 years, trying to hold back darkness with rules and guns, only to discover the real battle was inside himself all along. Now we plant, he said finally. Build. Create something that lasts longer than violence. Think we can? Cross took her hand. I think we owe it to ourselves to try. They started small. A vegetable garden that actually took root this time. A chicken coop that didn't fall apart in the first windstorm. Repairs to the cabin that turned it from a shelter into a home. New furniture Cross built by hand. Curtains Lena sewed from fabric she'd bought in Timber Creek. A real bed frame instead of just blankets on the floor. As spring turned to summer, they acquired more cattle. 10 head from a rancher in Timber Creek looking to downsize. Cross built a proper barn with Lena's help, the two of them working side by side under the Montana sun until their hands were calloused and their backs ached. But it was good work, honest work, the kind that left you tired but satisfied at the end of the day. Word spread slowly that Ethan Cross, former U.S. Marshal, was homesteading in the valley. Some people came looking for trouble, testing to see if the legend was true. Cross sent them away without violence, his reputation enough to make most men think twice. One man didn't leave quietly, a young hotshot looking to make a name by killing the famous Marshal. He drew on Cross outside the barn, 15 feet away, confident. Cross didn't even draw. He just stood there, looking at the kid with tired eyes. You really want to do this? Cross asked quietly. The kid's hand was shaking. You killed my brother. In a saloon fight in Durango 3 years back. Cross remembered the claim jumper gang, the standoff. The kid had looked older then, meaner. Your brother drew first, tried to shoot me in the back. That's a lie. It's the truth. I got witnesses said the same. Cross's voice was gentle. I'm sorry about your brother. Sorry you lost him. But killing me won't bring him back. It'll just make you a murderer instead of a mourner. You don't get to lecture me. You're right. I don't. Cross spread his hands. So if you're going to shoot, shoot. But know that Miss Vale's watching from the cabin with a rifle. You kill me, she kills you. And then what was the point? The kid looked at the cabin, saw Lena in the window, rifle indeed trained on him. His resolve crumbled. He holstered his gun, tears streaming down his face. I just wanted someone to blame, he whispered. I know, Cross said, but blame won't help. Trust me, I've tried. The kid left. Cross never saw him again. Summer became fall, the aspens turning gold and crimson. Cross and Lena worked from dawn to dusk, building something real. At night, they sat by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes just existing in companionable silence. One evening, Lena looked across the fire at Cross and said, I never thanked you. For what? For pulling me out of that arroyo, for not leaving me behind when I was wounded and useless. You were never useless. I was broken. Still am in some ways. She poked at the fire with a stick. But less broken than I was. You did that. We did that, Cross corrected. Both of us. Together. Lena was quiet for a moment, then, you ever think about what comes next, after we've built this place up? Sometimes. And? Cross looked out the window at the valley, at the mountains, at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. I think about Tom, about all the people I couldn't save. And I think maybe the best way to honor them is to build something they'd have wanted to see, something good and lasting. Like what? Like a place where people can come when they need help. Travelers, folks running from trouble, kids with nowhere to go. Cross's voice was thoughtful. This valley's big enough for more than just us. Maybe we could be a way station, a safe place in a dangerous world. Lena smiled. You can't help yourself, can you? Still trying to save people. Old habits. I like it. She stood, walked to stand beside him at the window. Let's do it. Build something bigger than just us. Something that matters. And they did. Over the next year, they expanded, built a second cabin for guests, spread word through the territories that Cross Valley, as it became known, was a safe haven for those in need. Some people came and left after a few days. Others stayed, helping with the work, becoming part of something larger. A widow with 2 children, running from a violent husband. They stayed through the winter, and by spring the woman was managing the guest cabin like it was her own. An Apache teenager, cast out from his tribe for refusing to fight. Cross taught him to work the land, and the kid taught Cross and Lena better ways to read the weather and the seasons. A former soldier, haunted by what he'd seen in the Indian Wars. He didn't talk much, but he was strong, reliable, and after 6 months he smiled for the first time. The valley filled with life, not just people, but purpose. Silas Crow visited twice, bringing supplies and news from the territories. On his second visit, he sat with Cross on the porch as the sun set. "You've built something good here," the bounty hunter said. "We're trying." "More than trying, you're succeeding." Silas took a pull from his whiskey flask. "You know what the funny thing is? You're doing more good now than you ever did wearing the badge." "I don't know about that." "I do. The law catches bad men. What you're doing here, you're preventing them from becoming bad in the first place. That's worth more than all the arrests in the world." Cross thought about that long after Silas left. 2 years after arriving in the valley, Cross and Lena stood together on the ridge, looking down at what they'd built. 4 cabins now, a proper barn, fields of crops, cattle grazing peacefully. Smoke rose from multiple chimneys. Children, the widow's kids and others who'd found their way here, played near the river. "It's not what I expected," Lena said. "What did you expect?" "More fighting, more running." She leaned against him. "More loneliness." "Are you lonely?" "No, for the first time in my life, I'm not." She turned to look at him. "Are you?" Cross thought about Tom Garrett, about his father, about all the ghosts he'd carried for so long. They were still there, would always be there. But they didn't own him anymore. "No," he said, "I'm not." Lena smiled. "Good. Because I was thinking, dangerous. I was thinking," she continued, ignoring him, "that maybe it's time we made this official. The partnership, I mean." Cross looked at her. "You asking me to marry you, Miss Vale?" "Maybe I am. You got a problem with that?" "Not a one." He pulled her close. "Ask me properly." She laughed, a sound he never got tired of hearing. "Ethan Cross, will you marry me?" "Yes." They were married a month later in the valley, with everyone from Cross Valley and half of Timber Creek in attendance. No preacher. They spoke their own vows under the open sky, promising to build together, to stand together, to be better together than they'd ever been apart. That night, as they lay in bed listening to the sounds of celebration still going on outside, Lena said, "Do you ever regret it? Losing the badge?" Cross thought about it honestly. "Sometimes. There are still bad men out there who need stopping, still people who need help. But I can't save everyone. And trying to kill something inside me." He turned to face her. What we've built here, it saved me. You saved me. We saved each other. Yeah, we did." Years passed. Cross Valley grew into a small settlement, then a recognized town. The territorial governor visited once, impressed by what he saw. Offered Cross a position, territorial marshal, overseeing law enforcement across the region. Cross declined politely. "I'm done with the badge, Governor. But if you need advice or a safe place for people in trouble, you know where to find me." The governor accepted that with good grace. Cross and Lena grew older, their hair graying, their faces weathering like the mountains around them. But they never stopped building, never stopped helping. The valley became known across the territories as a place of second chances, where the broken could heal and the lost could find direction. On Cross's 50th birthday, he stood on the same ridge where he'd first shown Lena the valley, looking down at everything they'd created. 30 cabins now, a school, a general store, a community that functioned on trust and mutual support rather than fear and violence. Lena joined him, her hand finding his automatically. "Thinking about the old days?" "Some. Miss them? Parts of them. Miss Tom. Miss feeling like I was making a clear difference." "You made a difference. You still do." "Different kind of difference. Better kind." She squeezed his hand. "You know what Tom would say if he could see this?" Cross smiled. He'd say I finally found that peace he was always telling me about. He'd be right. They stood together in the fading light, two people who'd found each other in the midst of chaos and built something beautiful from the wreckage. The valley below was alive with light and laughter, with life continuing in all its messy, complicated glory. And Ethan Cross, who had spent 15 years chasing death across the frontier, finally understood what it meant to truly live. Years later, when Cross was an old man with silver hair and hands too gnarled for gunfighting, a young marshal rode into the valley, fresh-faced, eager, wearing his badge like armor. "Mr. Cross, Ethan Cross." "That's me." "Sir, I've read about you, everything you did. You're a legend." The young man's eyes were bright with admiration. "I wanted to ask, what's the secret? How did you survive so long doing what you did?" Cross looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "I didn't survive by being the fastest or the meanest. I survived by knowing when to fight and when to walk away. By understanding that the badge doesn't make you better than anyone, it just makes you responsible for more." "Is there anything else? Any other advice?" Cross glanced toward the cabin, where Lena was teaching the newest group of arrivals how to plant a garden. "Yeah, don't forget that the point of all the fighting, all the chasing, all the blood, it's to make space for this. For peace. For building. For life." He met the young marshal's eyes. "You spend your whole career fighting, you'll forget what you're fighting for. Don't make that mistake." The marshal thanked him and rode out, carrying those words with him. Cross returned to his work, to his wife, to the valley that had given him everything the badge never could. And when, years later, Ethan Cross finally closed his eyes for the last time, he did so in a bed he'd built with his own hands, in a cabin full of love, surrounded by the people he'd helped and who'd helped him in return. He died not as a legend or a lawman, but as a man who'd learned finally that redemption wasn't found in the number of outlaws you caught or the battles you won. It was found in the quiet moments, in the choice to build instead of destroy, in the decision, made fresh every morning, to be better than you were the day before. Lena buried him on the ridge overlooking the valley, beneath the aspens that turned gold every fall. She placed his old badge on the grave, not because it defined him, but because it was part of his journey. And when people asked her about him in the years after, she always smiled and said the same thing. He was a good man who spent his whole life trying to be better, and in the end, he succeeded. The valley continued long after both of them were gone. Cross Valley became a permanent settlement, then a town, then a piece of history that people told stories about around campfires, stories about a marshal who gave up everything to build something that lasted. And in those stories, if you listened closely, you could hear the truth that Ethan Cross had learned the hard way but never forgot. That the real measure of a man isn't in how many battles he wins. It's in what he builds when the fighting's done,